Hello and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Thursday, September 6, 2018, and this is episode 71. My name is Carol and I'm known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. The show notes for this and every episode can be found on the blog and also in the episode thread in the Ravelry group. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so via private message on Ravelry by leaving a comment on YouTube or by leaving a comment in the group. And I'll try to get back to you pretty quickly. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today on this somewhat smoky day here in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada. Yes, it's smoky again. We've actually had a nice stretch of clear, sunny weather, but all good things must come to an end, and the winds have shifted and are now blowing the smoke from the wildfires out of the interior of the province to the coast once again. So when I got up this morning, I could definitely smell it in the air. And over the course of the morning, the mountains to the east have slowly faded from view. Although looking out my western facing window here, I can still see some blue sky and I can see mountains, albeit they are a bit hazy. I know where my mom lives, their air quality alert ended, I think it was yesterday. I get the notification on my phone, and so I guess that's what's happening. The smoke has shifted, moving from the interior out to the coast. Hopefully it'll all be over soon. It's certainly not pleasant. I can feel it in my throat. I can have been sneezing a bit this morning. It's no fun. It's not good for you. So I've got all the windows closed again, and thankfully the temperatures have been a little bit cooler lately than the hot summer weather we had. So I'm hoping the house doesn't get too stuffy. Anyway, that's all I need to talk about there. Thanks to all of you who reached out this week, got in touch. It was nice to hear from you as always, and I always appreciate the time you take to touch base. I really enjoy the reciprocal nature of the podcast. It's lots of fun. I've gotten to meet people from all over the place. So normally I think about the episode's title after I've recorded, more often than not. But this week I have this title in mind for a few days. I gave into my worst, or maybe some people would say my best, not instincts, but what's the word I'm looking for? Impulses. And I cast on a bunch of shawls. I know I talked a little bit last week about being tempted by some new patterns. And as I started sort of shopping the stash for one or two of them, other things just leapt out at me. And before you knew it, I had 4 shawls cast on. And I haven't finished, of course, the ones that are already on my needles. No, that would make way too much sense. But I've had a lot of fun. So, knitting's supposed to be fun, and there are no knitting police, as people have been known to say. So I embraced that sentiment and just went to town. First, I will show you a pair of socks that you have seen before. And I was, just whipping along on these because I wasn't knitting shawls. And since I started knitting shawls, I haven't really been knitting socks. But I showed this to you, I believe, last week. This is a sock for my brother-in-law, Ed. It'll be for his birthday gift in November. The yarn is Crazy Zauberball, and it is in just let me look, I've got notes here. A 1660 ombre Flusbet, which apparently translates into riverbed. So I'm making it easy and calling these my riverbed socks. So I knit these from the top down, and I did an afterthought heel, kind of just once I got to about here. I took the yarn from the other end of the skein and inserted this heel, and then finished up to the toe. So those were finished last week. And then I just because Zauberball Crazy has no repeat, here's what the skein looks like now. I didn't even bother trying to make them match because they will not match. So I just cast on right where I left off, worked my way down, and I inserted the waste yarn here for an afterthought heel. But because the yarn that's sitting at the outside of the ball is really similar to what was used right in this section and just before it, what I've decided to do is I'm going to knit this whole sock right down to the toes, and I'm thinking by then I'll have a bit of some more contrasting yarn to choose from to knit the afterthought heel. I just thought it would look nicer. So that's where I am on those. I think when I showed them last week, I think I'd only sort of gotten a little ways down. So I did actually knit on these quite a bit for a bit, and they moved along quickly, and then I got distracted. So let's see here. I'm trying to think about how I went about this, because it was not a straight line from A to B. I believe the first thing that I went looking for is yarn for the new shawl in the Shawl Society 3 by Helen Stewart called Planting Seeds. So I'll show you what that looks like. It is a 3-color shawl, kind of in a half, well, not exactly half circle, I guess more of a crescent shape. And as you can see, Helen just used 3 basically solid colored yarns there. And so as I was kind of working through, my first thought was not to do solid color yarns. I dug out this collection of yarns that I've been wanting to work with for a while. So first off, I have this, and if you've been watching for a while, you've seen this yarn set shown numerous times. It's a Party of 5 by Sweet Georgia Yarns in the Honey Fig colorway, and it features these 5 colors. And I have tried to put them to use before and failed, and ended up taking this yellow one out of the mix and have had it tucked aside with this Anthem, another Sweet Georgia Tough Love sock, and then I used that for the Maytham shawl. That was the first, I think the first shawl in this new Shawl Society, along with this London Fog colorway, and some leftovers of the ultraviolet. So I had put these 3 yarns together with this collection. I'll just grab them in my little balls of yarn in my hand. There it is. So these were the 4 that were remaining from the Tough Love, or from the Party of 5. So I was trying to work out how I might, oops, I just dropped one, how I might incorporate these into this shawl, since there were all those interesting slip stitches, and I thought I could kind of blend the colors in this area and then end with some plain color here. I'm back. I'm recording a little bit later. I had some things to tend to after the doorbell rang. Now I can hear my neighbors cutting his grass. He's got a terrible sounding lawnmower. It sounds like it's going to die any minute. He's just turned it off. I'm not sure if it's going to be going again, and hopefully it doesn't interfere with the recording, but I kind of have to do this now, so hopefully it doesn't. Anyway, where was I? I was talking about my first thought was to knit the new shawl, Planting Seeds, with some leftovers from my Maytham shawl, and also some mini skeins from the Sweet Georgia yarns. So I actually did start knitting. And I just sort of knew it wasn't going to work. I thought it'd be too busy. And I also kind of hated to do another shawl in the same collection with yarns I'd already used in another shawl from that collection. So then what came to mind was the Aurora shawl, which was another pattern by Helen Stewart that was in the first Shawl Society collection. And I've actually knit it twice. So I'm going to put those pictures here. The gray one here was my first one, and then this beiges and browns was my second one. So the first one I had knit out of another Sweet Georgia Party of 5 mini skein set, plus an extra little bit of yarn I'd had, because you need 6 colors. And so what I decided to do was do this shawl again with all of those colors. So I got some done. So it's a real mess. There's a lot of yarns hanging off here. So here's what I've started with. Here's the first section. So you can see I've used the anthem for that. And then I have just started the first bit of color work with the grape jelly and the London fog. And then my plan is to do the next set of color work with raspberry and ultraviolet, because I thought they had a really good contrast. And then the last bit is plain, and I'll use this mulberry for that. So I'm actually really excited to see this one come together. The color choices are completely different than my original 2, and they're definitely colors I wear and love. And I just think it's just kind of fun to knit this again. If you've been following me for any amount of time, I hardly ever knit a pattern twice, and let alone 3 times. But there's just something about the shawl I really like. I like the finished size. It's a nice size to use as a scarf, which is how I like to wear most of my shawls. And it's just really fun to play with the colors. So I'm super enjoying this already, and just really excited to see how it looks when it's done. So I'm just going to pack up all these little bits of yarn so they don't go rolling around. So yeah, so that's what I started on first, because once I sort of picked out all that, put all those colors together and figured out the order, I really wanted to get started on that. So then that left the planting seeds. So what was I going to do there? So I originally, I tried all sorts of different color combinations. It took me a while, as it does. I'm just going to grab here what I had originally planned. So I eventually put, sorry, it's very scrambly. I have things literally everywhere, and I'm trying to keep it all sane. My original color combination was this. And this is Tanis Fiber Arts, and this is a Louette Gems fingering, and this was Malabrigo sock. This is in Persia. This is charcoal, and I had the label here. The Tanis Fiber Arts was their 50, sorry, I don't have my glasses on. No, 80/20 superwash merino and nylon in the shadow colorway. So I thought that would be really nice, and I was going to do the shadow at the top there, blend in the charcoal, and then end with the Persia. So I started knitting it up, but then when I went to add in the charcoal with this, I found the yarns were quite a bit different in the charcoal was just a lot thinner. I don't know if you can see. and I just didn't like the way it looked, and I didn't like the way it felt, and especially knowing that this whole band was going to be in charcoal. I just didn't like the idea of it being that much flimsier, I guess, airy than the rest of the shawl. So I discarded the idea of using these, and I remembered that I had at one time bought a whole bunch of Bluette Gems fingering on sale. I think it was from, oh, sorry, forget the name. If I think of it, I'll put it in here. It's a company that carries a lot of discounted yarns anyway. So I went looking at what I had in stash, and I came up with this, which is called Pure White, and then this blue called Neptune, and I decided to put those together. Now, when I was looking at the shawl, for me, when I look at the picture, the color that leaps out at me most is the pink. And so rather than go from dark to light like she does here, in a way, I decided to have this as my first color. But rather than having the charcoal next, I decided to go with the blue and then have the charcoal at the bottom, kind of anchoring the shawl. So I was knitting away, and knitting away on the blue and the white, and I was outside, and I was looking at our backyard with its green grass and the blue skies, and I was drinking tea out of this cup and thinking, oh, blue and white and green, and wouldn't that be fun? Well, I have it. I might as well take a sip. And I knew that I had this green in my stash of Bluette Gems fingering also, and I thought, oh, wouldn't that be bright and pretty? And then something made me come to my senses. And yes, blue and green and white is very pretty. But I already have a green, emerald green shawl going on in Ivy Over the Door. So I didn't really need that. And I really liked this combination, and I thought it was very calming and just a totally different look than it would have been with this bright green. And so I did go back to my original thought. And I can show you how that's coming along. Just started putting the gray in. So here's the first section with the white and the blue. And as you can see, I've started adding in the gray. I think it's a lot more wearable and more neutral, I guess, even though I'm not sure it's blue and neutral. But I'm glad that I did make that decision, because while I think the green would have been pretty, I don't think it really would have been something I would wear. So that's coming along. It's a long way of showing you my thought process that went into it, but I also like this is a light fingering yarn, so it's similar to the weight that was used in the pattern, because that was I think it's classified as a lace weight when you buy it and by yardage, but it's more like a light fingering, Helen Stewart said. So this to me is just more similar to what was used, and I'm using a 4mm needle, which I think is what was recommended. And so the knitting is a little bit airier than I will often knit a fingering weight shawl on. I often will do that on like a 3.5. But I like the idea now of it kind of being a little bit airy, because they'll all be the same. So anyway, that's where I am with that one. Okay. Oh, and I got to show you this bag. I had run out of pretty well every tin of the David's teas that I normally drink every morning. So I kind of go through a couple of breakfast teas and an orange pekoe, and those are my favorite. The black teas are my favorite. So because I was stocking up, I spent enough to earn this David's tea tote. What I like about it is, even though these are like supposed to be leaves, not knitting stitches, they kind of remind me of knit fabric. So I thought it would make a really good project bag for my knitting. It's a great size for a sweater. Okay, so let me just see. So the next shawl that I went looking for yarn for was the Sweet Georgia Yarns mystery shawl for this fall. And it's called the Tulamine Shawl, and it is by Tabitha Hedrick. And so while I was looking for yarn for that shawl, I was reminded of last year's mystery shawl, which I did not take part in the mystery part of it. In fact, I wasn't really, I guess I probably had heard about it because I'm on the newsletter, but it hadn't registered with me at the time that it was a mystery shawl. Knit along that there was such a thing, but I came across the pattern later, and I started, I think it was late last year, early this year, I started knitting the Cedarburg shawl, which is what the mystery shawl was. And that looks like this. I think I actually have a color picture. Not a very good color picture, but that might remind you, or might be better visual. So I had started knitting it out of these 3 yarns. They're all Sweet Georgia Tough Love Sock. This is Gold Mine, this is Smitten, and this is Orchid. So they definitely go together well because I'm pulling out colors from this variegated yarn. And I had it probably, I'm going to say maybe half knit up. I can show you a picture here when it was sort of a little ways into it. I think it was about maybe 25% done in this picture. And the more I knit, the more I decided I probably wouldn't wear it. It was pretty, but it was bright, and it just wasn't quite right. And so while I was looking for yarns for this new mystery shawl, I thought perhaps I would use these. Or I had this purple skein, which is not a Sweet Georgia yarn. It's called, it's from Impulse of Delight. She used to dye out of Whistler, BC, and I used to have a lot of her yarns. I'm getting down, and I don't think she's dyeing anymore. So Impulse of Delight Summit Sock in Dark Amethyst. And I liked the way that these 3 looked together. I thought the purple helped tone down the gold. And then I decided rather than use them for this year's mystery shawl, I thought I would reknit Cedarburg in this combination. And so that's what I've been doing. And so I have got this far. Whoops. Let's see, maybe it should be going this way. So I really like the dark line. I think it tones, like I say, tones down the bright of the gold. Kind of gives it a good contrast. And I'm more likely to wear this than with the hot pink. One handy thing, well, yes and no. Because I had knit this shawl before and there were some places where I had broken the yarn, when I wound it back up, I just kind of tied each end on loosely where it joined the, where I had, what am I trying to say? As I had broken the yarn in the first place, when I rewound it, I just loosely tied on those sections of yarn all together. And so it works out that, I have just enough of this yarn to get this far before I broke it, etc. Now, the first time I got this far, and I didn't have enough of this gold to finish this part before the yarn ended. And so I went back, ripped it back, and I went down a needle size, and then I ended up with like this much left over. So rather than knitting it on a 3.5 millimeter the way I did before, I'm doing it on a 3.25, and that should ensure that I have the right amount in those sections, because I had like this much left of the smitten after that section. So that's working out really well too. I'm not ending up with a bunch of joins that are unnecessary. So anyway, I've had a lot of fun with this one. But what was I going to use for my new mystery shawl knit along? So I went digging through my Sweet Georgia yarns stash, and I found this combination that I had ordered with a 3-color shawl in mind. This is called Pistachio. This one is called Mirror Pond, and this one is called Sea Spray. And so I thought, well, there, that'll do. And then again, it's a mystery shawl, so you don't really know how these colors are all going to be used together. And I kept looking at this one and feeling like it was maybe too bright, and also there was a lot of this green, same green, in the variegated, and I was afraid it might get lost in it. So what I came across in my stash was this skein of a one of a kind. I had got it through a sale when you kind of got a grab bag of this is not a specific or not a regular color that they dye. It was like a one-off, but I thought it looked really nice together. Not quite so bright. Actually, I guess it's very much like that. Can you tell I like that color? But I thought it complemented them well. And so that's what I went with. So if you do not want to be spoiled, here's fair warning. I am going to show a completed clue 1 and also half of clue 2 completed. So fair warning, look away, come back in a few minutes. So last week I mentioned that I didn't know what shape the shawl was going to be, but actually I was wrong. If I looked at more closely at the information that was out before the knit along began, we were told it was a rectangular shawl. So I downloaded clue 1. I think I started a day or two after the knit along did. And for clue 1, you knit like a big square. So it was like, ooh, now that's intriguing. And I just, I sort of thought, okay, the shawl must work out from there. And it does, only it works out on the diagonal, which I thought was very clever. So this is the center back, I would assume, not having seen the whole shawl, but that's to me the logical way that this is going to work out. And then, sorry, I just got my needle holder caught in a hole here. And so this is the first half of clue 2 that's been completed. So you can see that the green is being worked in as stripes, and there's a little bit of lace detail here. And so far, that's how the shawl is shaping up, coming out from the center. And whether these ends will remain pointed when it's done, or whether they'll somehow be filled in to make a rectangle, I don't know. But I've just started the second half of clue 2. And so this has been a really fun one to work on too. Does that show very well? Hopefully. Yeah, so I'm very pleased with my color choice. I still think that maybe this one, especially if it ends up being used in large blocks like this one has been, I think I wouldn't have been as happy with the brightness. And so I do like this kind of spring appley green. So yeah, so those are all 4 new shawls that I have cast on this week. And the best thing is that they all use multiple yarns, and all those yarns have come from Stash. And so I feel really good. I don't get really hung up on Stash too much, but there are times, especially when I go through a bunch and pull it all out, and then I have to put it all back together and make sure it fits in my bins and my baskets and things. Then sometimes I kind of go, yeah, you really need to use some of this up. So I guess between them, 3 of them each use up 3 skeins of yarn, and then the Aurora uses a whole bunch of minis or leftovers, and so that's probably equivalent to, I'm going to guess, maybe a little over a skein of yarn, maybe a skein and a half on the high end. So yeah, it feels good to kind of get those going. Now, what you can't see is I'm looking across at my trunk here, and I have several project bags, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as a matter of fact, sitting on that trunk with projects in them. So part of me is like, yeah, you're clearing a bunch of yarn out of your stash. At the same time, you have a whole bunch more that's already supposed to be in the process of being knit. So I really do have to get back to those 2. But right now I'm having too much fun with these projects. What am I reading? I finished On the Banks of Plum Creek by Laura Ingalls Wilder. As I mentioned, I now want to go to Pioneer Girl, the original manuscript that was that the Little House series was based on, and it's an annotated version, so there's a whole lot of background information about the manuscript itself. As you go along, it correlates with the notes about Laura's real life and things like that. So I'm looking forward to kind of doing that and comparing what's in the book to comparing what's in the story to what was actually occurred in Laura's life. So that'll be my next thing I turn to, but I'm not sure when. I haven't done a lot of reading this week. This didn't take me that long to finish. So that brings us to what's been going on this past week. When I spoke to you last, I said that Cameron and I were going to go up to the cabin for the long weekend, for the Labor Day weekend. And in the end, we changed our mind. A couple of factors went into that decision. One is that Thursday morning, I got a call from my mom to say that there had been another mudslide on the highway that leads between Clinton, where she lives, and the next town south, Cache Creek. And there's been a series of mudslides this summer, and they're all related to the wildfires in that area last year, which has made the ground unstable. So when they're getting a heavy rain, the ground is giving way because there's no roots to hold it. A lot of that area is sagebrush and some trees, but it's not super heavily forested. And so the loss of just even those plants has really made the soil unsteady. As it happened, our younger son, Colin, was up for a couple nights visiting with my mom out at the cabin. And so he at first thought that he was going to have to come home kind of a long way to avoid that stretch of highway because it was closed. And but he ended up waiting it out. They had predicted that estimated, I guess, that the highway would be open by noon. So he decided rather than go the long way round, he'd give it a bit of time and see if it did in fact open, which it did, I think, about 20 to noon. So he came home the normal way, which is quite a bit shorter than going around. Going around the other way adds at least, I think, a couple hours to your trip. So I was thinking about that, looking at the weather forecast to see if there were any more showers predicted, because we really didn't want to get caught up there. And I just couldn't really get into the idea of going. I kept thinking about um, how it'd be just nicer to stay home, kind of enjoy our new backyard. Had a lot of jobs that needed to be done, not a lot of really big ones, but a lot of little ones. And if we went away last weekend, and then Cameron was going to go away this coming weekend to go up to the cabin, and there's some work to be done. There's kind of a work party going. I just felt like that was missed opportunity for getting some of the things done around the house that really needed to be done. And so that's in the end what we decided to do, was stay home. But we did so with the idea that this was supposed to have been a holiday weekend for us. So we didn't overdo it. We took time, especially in the mornings and the evenings, to sit outside and enjoy the yard. I've got my bird feeders back up, and it took a couple days, but the birds have found them again. And can sit under the we can sit in the covered part of the deck and look out towards the garden, the bird feeders, so it's not right out in the sun. And in the mornings we'd sit there and drink our tea, and I would knit and he would read and watch the birds. And we just took that time. And then on Sunday evening, no, that's wrong, Monday evening, on Sunday evening, later in the day, I had this sort of just a thought of seeing if all my sisters that live in town were free, and their husbands, and if they wanted to come over for happy hour on Monday, Labor Day. It's the last day before school starts. One of my sisters is a teacher. Her husband's a school counselor, so they were getting ready to go back to work. And I just sent out a text, and it all fell into place. And so everyone came over late Monday afternoon, brought an appy, and we sat under the deck and just had a really nice visit. And I think everyone was gone by 8 o'clock. So it was a nice early evening for those who had to work the next day, and yet it gave us all a chance to get together because we hadn't for a while. And kind of a nice way to end off the summer, kick off fall, and give our deck a bit of a deck warming. Gave a chance for everyone to see our yard. So that was a really nice way to end the week. Another exciting thing that happened this past weekend is that our son moved into his new townhouse. He took us over Saturday morning to take a look at it, and then the actual moving didn't take place till later in the day because he was waiting till his brother, our son Colin, got off work, and his girlfriend was going to help, and also a friend of his was coming out after work too. So we did the actual moving in the sort of late afternoon, early evening. So it only took between us all a couple of loads. And Sutton had the obligatory pizza that you get for people who help you move. And so, yeah, he's getting settled in. He's without internet. He had sort of double booked. He had booked for people to come in, hook up internet yesterday morning without realizing he had another appointment. And so I went over and house sat for him while the phone guy came. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to hook it up, so that's been delayed. But yeah, he's getting settled in. Took this week off work and unpacking, settling in. It's starting to look like home, so that's good. Excited for him. So because I didn't go up to the cabin last weekend as planned, I didn't want us to leave 2 weekends in a row and have to ask our kids to come water our lawn 2 weekends in a row. Just didn't seem fair. It's not just a matter of turning on one sprinkler and leaving it. There's 3 different areas that need to be watered in succession. So it's kind of like you got to get a sprinkler on, let it go for an hour, come back, change it, etc. So I decided, because we didn't have to ask anyone last weekend, that I would go up to the cabin this weekend. And we're making a little bit of a holiday out of it by taking Friday and Monday off too. So we'll have a 4-day weekend. So tomorrow morning we'll head up there. And then the work will get done on Saturday, and then most people are going to go home Sunday, but we'll stay behind and come home Monday. So looking forward to being up there one last time this year. I haven't been up there since the beginning of July. Really didn't get the opportunity other than that this summer to go and enjoy the cabin. So definitely looking forward to that. And it's beautiful there in the fall. I think we're supposed to get some rain here at the coast, but inland it's supposed to be pretty decent. So it should be lovely and crisp and fresh. So looking forward to that little getaway. And then, I guess school has started for at least people here in BC, and I know there are different areas that have different start dates. So some of your kids might have already gone back to school sometime in August, but Tuesday was the first day of school here. So I actually haven't talked to my daughter to see how things went, so I have to do that before we head out. But I had texted my granddaughter and said, just think, only 10 more months till summer vacation. And she thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, it's turning out so far to look like a lovely fall. I love this time of year. Spring and fall are my favorite seasons. So I'm enjoying the little bit cooler weather and sunny skies that we've had. It's been really nice, and lots of bird activity right now, so I'm enjoying that too. So I guess on that note, I will wish you all a happy, well, it's not officially fall yet, but to me, as soon as school starts, it's fall. So happy fall. And I guess happy spring if you're in the southern hemisphere. Your weather will be warming up. But still, spring and fall, both really nice times of year. So I hope you get lots of chance to do some knitting. I will have some car knitting this weekend, obviously. So I probably get close to finishing Ed's socks. So I'd better take another skein of sock yarn in case I need that for the ride home. And I'm sure I'll get a chance to do some knitting up there too. So I'm looking forward to that. So anyway, now I'm just babbling. So I will say goodbye for now, and I'll talk to you soon.